Hello, I'm Joshua Unruh, Superhero Scholar. Welcome to Superhero University on Batgirl of Burnside. Session number 4. Listen all y'all, this is Sabotage. Have a seat. Class is now in session. Hello, I'm Joshua Unruh, your Superhero Scholar, welcoming you to Session 4 of Batgirl of Burnside. Listen all y'all, this is Self-Sabotage. We're going to jump right into it today with a little bit of a recap. So I haven't heard too much from you guys about the ethics of hacking, but the general ethics of vigilantism definitely come up in this issue. A little bit of shade is thrown that way. Similarly, you've all been quiet about trans misogyny, but in a weird twist of fate, the backlash against the creative team is addressed in this story as well, at least on a meta level. I'm still interested in having that conversation, so keep those comments coming, and we'll see if the things in this issue give you guys any more reason to discuss it. So up to this point, much of Barbara's life seems out of her control, especially academically. But, if nothing else, she's taken control of Batgirl's image. She's decided to make sure Burnside sees her as she wants to be seen, come what may. We've got a new love interest entering Barbara's life in Officer Liam Powell of the Gotham City Police Department. And lastly, Batgirl continues to face cutout villains who are working at the behest of some mysterious benefactor that knows all of Batgirl's, and even worse, Barbara's, deepest secrets. So that's what we've got going into this 4th issue. It's definitely heating up, and something really interesting happened for me as I was preparing for this story. When I finished my read-through of this issue and started to prepare my notes, I realized that this was the first time in Batgirl of Burnside that I hadn't really enjoyed myself. I didn't feel like the story was very solid. I felt like there were a lot of choices made that weren't entirely in character or entirely earned. But I realized, thanks to the assistance of patrons Susie and Ethan, that I had been wrong about this entire issue. Especially Susie really managed to come in and give me a viewpoint on this book that cut through some of the haze. And to be honest, it's not entirely unfair that I would come to the conclusion that I came to originally. It might be difficult to understand how much previous versions of a character can imprint on you and just make it difficult to deal with the story that's in front of you as you read it. For much more of my life than not, Barbara has been Oracle. I have literally decades of Oracle in my mind. And Oracle had matured. She had grown to really be the mom of the Bat family in a lot of ways. Not the den mother, like she's trying to keep a lid on the place. She is the mom, the woman who is in charge, the woman who is responsible, who knows what's going on. And it was really difficult for me to come to this issue and read it for what it was, with that idea of a mature, poised, in control Oracle floating around in my head. But she's just not that person in Batgirl of Burnside. And once Susie helped me see that, I completely changed my mind on this. And I now love this issue. Looking at the issue, for the first time ever, we are going to start with the cover. I haven't really dealt with the covers in the previous issues because, although they're beautiful, they didn't necessarily bring anything to the story. They didn't necessarily tell a part of the story. And in this case, though, for issue 4, the cover's an absolute Rosetta Stone. So on the cover, you have a subway car of people. And you have many of them looking at their devices, their phones, their tablets, whatever. And many of them seem to be admiring Batgirl via social media. As a little nod to that continuous world building through brands, we have a new one, Blast Feed, presumably the DCU version of BuzzFeed. So you have all these people admiring Batgirl on the subway, but Barbara stands isolated and upset by the acceptance of her alter ego. This cover means things. It's going to, like I say, crack the code of the issue. Turning to the first page, it is a fantastic splash page, and this is how montages in comics should work. We instantly know that Batgirl has been extremely busy in Burnside and highly visible, both online and off. The type treatments combine with the action to tell us that she's following through on her promise from the end of last issue to be seen as she wishes to be seen. Apparently, one of the ways she wishes to be seen is as omnipresent. She's busting muggers. She's busting car thieves. She is being seen hanging out in a bar after saving some people's bacon. She's everywhere, and she's making sure that pictures are taken, that internet sites are commenting on it, that she's getting pictures for social media. Batgirl is all over Burnside, and she's all over the digital side of Burnside as well. We transition from that into what I can only call as Dinah's stern talking to. This scene is amazing. It is totally an irate mother dragging her daughter out of public to give her strongly worded advice. And you can tell that right away with Batgirl's response of course, citizen. It's so obvious to me that it's the daughter trying to play off getting dragged out of public by her mom. Dinah's entire posture is also that of finger-waggling anger. She has things to say to Barbara about the way Barbara's running her life, and she's going to tell him at the end of her index finger. To mirror that, Barbara's body language is completely closed off. She's sullen and angry, and not for nothing, but she's also hidden in shadow, even as she is protesting that if Batman wants to hide in shadow, he can, but she's not going to. Despite her words, she is hiding and protecting herself and shutting herself off from Dinah. To further cement that mother-daughter type of feel to this scene, Dinah even pulls a wait until your father gets home talking about Batman. As a side note, this is another place that having multiple versions of a character and knowing that there are a couple of weird continuity snarls in the back of your mind can make a scene weirder. Which version of Batman are we talking about right here? I think that the latest version of Batman is someone who chose to be purposefully theatrical. It's a little bit of fluff that I liked, borrowed from the Nolan movies. Not to mention that he's a member of the Justice League. He's been in pictures with Superman and Aquaman and Wonder Woman, probably on their satellite or moon base or whatever it is they have in Rebirth. So clearly this is a version of Batman that isn't exactly keeping to the shadows. However, he does strive to maintain a certain bit of mystique as part of his power, as part of his presence. And as the story progresses, we might, through Batgirl, understand a little bit about why he does it that way. In the end, this mother-daughter scene is inverted in a way that I found delightful. Instead of the sullen daughter storming away and threatening to move out, the stern mother storms away and threatens to move out instead. It's just a really brilliant subversion of that scene as it was going up until then. And if I take a step back and kind of look at what Dinah's doing, I think that this is Dinah trying to rebuild her friendship with Barbara and just going about it in the wrong way for this moment. I said at the end of the last issue, the fact that Dinah was helping Barbara take pictures of Batgirl. No one else in Barbara's life could do that right then except for Dinah. And despite the fact that Dinah had been insisting for a couple of issues that she hated Barbara, she was up there helping her. And I said at the end of that issue that that was a turning point for them, that was maybe a warming of their relationship. And I think that this scene carries that through. Dinah is trying to rebuild that bridge. She's trying to give some tough love that she thinks needs it. But when you couple how strongly she comes on in this scene with her behavior over the last few issues, it feels like she hasn't really earned that place in Barbara's life right now. Plus, as we will come to understand in the rest of this issue, Barbara is in crisis. And it's a crisis moment that is going to have her making more and more continuously redoubled bad decisions. From there, we move to the first on-page but second in the fiction date with Liam. I really appreciate the hook notification as a scene transition. That's just an ongoing reminder of how clever visuals are going to keep social media and technology forefront in our minds as we read this issue. And probably for the only time this issue, I'm going to say, note the fashion. Babs is cute and thrown together, while Powell is a straight edge. But he looks good. He looks like he just stepped out of a Abercrombie & Fitch catalog or something. Neither one of them seems to have put a ton of effort into their appearance, and yet they look like a hip, attractive couple out on the town. As we enter this, Barbara is telling Liam literally every damn thing about her messed up relationship with Dinah. And is that weird? I think a little. But people often feel comfortable telling other people things when they're not sure if they're ever going to see that person again. And as we progress, we see that Barbara is interested in Liam, but at the same time, he's not exactly a permanent fixture in her life. That not only allows her to open up a little more, but it means he's got no preconceptions or judgments on the situation. In fact, he's a friendly audience. He doesn't know Dinah, but he does know Barbara, and he likes her enough to date her. So he's going to come out on her side if he knows what's good for him. That's just smart date behavior, really. Also, when we get to the end of the book, if we think about Liam's position throughout the rest of this issue, it is a lot less weird from his perspective that Barbara would share all of this information with him. But, so we don't jump too far ahead and spoil things, more on that in a bit. In this explanation of what's been going on with her, Barbara said something that really stuck out to me. She said, "I've had a hard life, more than most." And I had to ask, seriously? Are you for real? I mean, certainly she had been wounded by the Joker. She had lost the use of her legs. She had to start getting it into her mind that she was going to be a paraplegic for life. That's difficult. I don't mean to downplay what that could have meant to her. But at the same time, she is an upper middle class, Caucasian American, attractive young girl. She's got a lot of privilege going for her. And really, when you compare her to the rest of the Bat family, it's a little weird for her to start insisting that she's had a harder life than most. You have an entire group of orphans and survivors of tragedy. Now, I would say, as a little bit of life advice, that measuring your suffering against other people's suffering is always a losing game. But even when you try and be a little bit objective here, that is an extremely self-centered statement for Barbara to make. And it kind of gives you an idea of the lens through which she's seeing her life right now. And it's not a good one. Liam mentions that there were constant notifications from Hook. Constant notifications from Hook. They never stopped until he contacted Barbara. Nothing to worry about there, I'm sure. Hint, hint, foreshadow, foreshadow. This leads to an unfortunate bit of humor from Liam that brings up Barbara's mom. Now, no matter how you look at it, Barbara's mother is a continuity snarl that I am not going to bother going into. But whichever version it is, Barbara's mom is complicated. She's difficult. It's not a subject that Barbara would open up about easily. Would she forget that she had done so? It strikes me as a little weird, especially knowing how the rest of the issue is going to go. Regardless, it is excellent foreshadowing of the big bad and the meta plot that will be escalated in this issue. Another example that Barbara's maybe not being her best self right now is when she declares that Liam is handsome enough to get a pass for his bad joke. That is very superficial for her. It's another warning sign that things are off, because that doesn't even sound like the Barbara of the last few issues to me. Here is also where we meet Jordan Barbary, son of a criminal, cool bad boy type, and reality television star. You can hear my eyes rolling as I say the words reality television star. But whatever else he is, he's also an all-around dangerous asshole. And according to Liam, Jordan Barbary is just like Batgirl. And here we have a little bit of a secret identity crisis as Liam complains about Batgirl to Barbara Gordon. And for those playing along at home, it does remind me of a similar scene from One Batman Too Many, the issue of Batman I mentioned in the last session, where Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale are on a date, and Vicky Vale has had enough of Batman's fascist, weirdo, vigilante tendencies, but thinks Bruce is great. It's also the place that Jason Todd coins a phrase I have used a million times since then, secret identity crisis. Liam spends this time arguing against Batgirl and vigilantes and suggesting that people should let the cops do their jobs, that people should trust the police. But he's speaking from an extremely privileged position here. What if you can't trust the cops? Looking at some real-life examples, we have an entire new social movement in Black Lives Matter, demonstrating to us constantly that people of color, especially African American men, are in a greater danger from police officers. And officers are rarely punished for taking the lives of African American men when these traffic stops or whatever go wildly out of control. And if nothing else, there's just the sheer percentages of incarcerated and convicted people of color compared to white Americans. So that's your real world stuff. But on top of that, Liam seems to misunderstand how the law works. He blames Batgirl for the so-called revolving door of people arrested and sent back out on the street. That's a district attorney problem. He mentions how Riot Black may sue the Gotham City Police Department, but that literally makes no sense. They weren't even there when he was stopped. He'd be suing Batgirl if he was going to sue anybody, not the Gotham City Police Department. Also in the fiction, you have Gotham's own history of corruption. Make no mistake, when Bruce Wayne came back to Gotham, it was not a nice place. It was a place that was riddled with corruption from the mayor's office on down, including all through the Gotham City Police Department. Now, it's some number of years later, and I like it when Gotham's not a crime-ridden cesspool because, that way it looks like Batman is succeeding. But nevertheless, when you have that level of corruption, it creates a culture. And it's a culture that isn't going to disappear overnight. And it's like Liam's not even aware of it. You also have the fact that this is Gotham City, a place that is not just famous for muggers and liquor store robberies, but also murder clowns and puzzle serial killers. Anytime the story takes a step back and asks if Gotham City would be better off without Batman or without Batgirl, or if Metropolis would be better off without Superman, you're running into the meta problem of arguing against a world predicated on vigilantism being an ultimate good. This is a world built around the idea that people putting on colorful costumes to defeat criminals is the best way to approach that problem. Yeah, it's not exactly a grown-up or adult idea. These are characters made for children. Nevertheless, when you have someone in the fiction asking these questions, it kind of makes them sound stupid. We already know that Gotham City is better off with Batman, and that's before he joins the Justice League and saves the Earth from this week's alien invasion. All that said, Barbara takes the conversation in stride. She even claims that it gives her something to think about. But does it? I don't really think so. It's not like she's standing there on her own doorstep having an existential crisis. She's just trying to escape the conversation. We close on a cute goodnight kiss. These kids are obviously into each other. We transition from there into the apartment with Frankie, and we are told that Frankie has been up late every night working on a virus that is just relentlessly attacking the Hook servers. It is all pervasive and really putting the pressure on the eventual big release of the platform. Nothing to worry about here either, I'm sure. Frankie tells Barbara that Dinah moved out, and Barbara hadn't noticed. That's another hint that things aren't quite right with friend to the end Barbara Gordon. Frankie then tells Barbara that Dinah is in a band, and Barbara hadn't noticed. Something's definitely going on with Barbara that is making her act very out of character. Also, it's a very skillful backdoor pilot for Black Canary's upcoming book, where she and her band are basically Kung Fu Josie and the Pussycats on the run. It's pretty great, and I recommend it. We transition from there to the next day at Burnside College, and Barbara is sleeping at her desk. She is not being responsible. She's not working to fix her academic problem. And Nadima is nonplussed, which leads me to believe that this is a thing that has happened a lot since Barbara started burning the Batgirl candle at both ends. Jeremy bursts in, and Nadima tells him to leave Barbara alone because of her date, and Jeremy is a little jealous of Liam, and I don't love it. I know that they're trying to create like kind of a soap opera triangle, something or other, just keeping that Jeremy love interest thing going. But Jeremy is a terrible love interest. It's unethical, if nothing else, and kind of creepy because of their age differences. I don't like it. However, Jeremy wakes her up to tell Barbara that Professor Krupke is ready to meet her ASAP that very afternoon, and we know she's not ready. And then her response is to day drink? Yo, who the F is this? This is not Barbara Gordon. Finally, in this conversation with Nadeema, we get a few more details about the algorithm and how special it is. First of all, it would take a year to rewrite from memory, which I recognize is a long time, and they're probably not going to hold her spot in the graduate department, but still, maybe get started. And then she lets drop that it is a map of her mind that is the basis for this algorithm, and that angle is revolutionary. It's the thing that got her into the graduate program and makes Jeremy and Nadeema and Professor Krupke so excited about her work. However, she makes a good point. Maybe that's not a thing that you want to back up anywhere. Wait a minute. Did Barbara just say that she made a computer copy of her brain? I'm sure that's nothing to worry about. Babs then escapes that conversation by changing the subject to Barbary. Nadeema hates him and talks about how celebrity and privilege aren't excuses, and that Barbary is dangerous. This touches a Batgirl nerve for Barbara, but in exactly the wrong way. Barbara gets focused on Barbary instead of thinking about how celebrity and privilege aren't an excuse and can make you dangerous. We find out very quickly that she is going to double down on that confusion by visiting Kadir's apartment. It's evening. Late evening. Barbara clearly skipped out on her advisor. She was gone all afternoon to avoid Professor Krupke. And then she shows up late, having stalked Kadir. Let's remember that Kadir is a Batgirl fanboy at this point. He is enjoying being her gearhead and being part of the magic. He gave her the advice about taking control of her image last issue. But here he calls her knowing where he lives and showing up there late unannounced into question, and by that calls vigilantism into question, or at least points out that there are some limits to it, or some lines that if Barbara steps over, it gets a little creepy. I don't think that that's an accident, and I think that this is the story making some of the argument against the most egregious examples of how vigilantism can be abused. Now, is this evidence that hacking DCU's Uber is over the top? Not necessarily. But I do think it's interesting that inside the text we have people who have been Batgirl fans up till now asking that question. Barbara guilts Kadir into loaning her one of the superbikes so that she can shake down Barbary at a bar but be ready for a street race? I gotta tell you, I join Kadir in discomfort with this plan. It's not well thought out. It's probably not going to end well. This is where we really start to see what Barbara in Crisis is doing to Batgirl. Barbara is clearly uncomfortable with her life as Barbara and has retreated into her life as Batgirl. And in this case, she's dragging Kadir along with her. She has decided to punch at the one thing she feels will also make her feel better as Barbara, proving Liam wrong about Batgirl. From there, we go to the bar, and Batgirl has her game face on, but the bouncers aren't really impressed. They're not surprised to see her. It doesn't leave them shaking in their boots that Batgirl is there and looking like she's spoiling for a fight. And maybe that's one of the reasons that it's useful to maintain some mystique. You've heard the saying, familiarity breeds contempt, or at least in this case, indifference. She's the friendly neighborhood Batgirl now, instead of the terrifying vigilante that hangs out with Batman. You know, the scourge of Gotham's underworld. As Batgirl goes in, we see that Dinah is singing with Ashes on Sunday, and she is legit amazing. She's so good that it leaves Batgirl agog. A little more of that backdoor pilot, right? Batgirl goes to confront Barbary, who is just as unimpressed as the bouncers are. I raise the question again. Is it worth maintaining some of that mystique to make sure that when you show up, your presence makes an impact? I think that we're coming to understand a little bit more of the way Batman runs things, and why the way Batgirl has run things in Burnside is maybe not the best option. It's not bad that she took over her image. It's bad that she took over her own image and then turned it into this social media darling. But we'll talk more about that as the issue progresses. Right now, we've got a street race. Barbary challenges her to the race. I ask you, why not stop him right here? right there in the bar, before it escalates any further. We also see that Barbara is prepared to shrug off her adoring public when she's got her game face on. She follows Barbary out into the parking lot and threatens him, but he doesn't care. Now, what's hard for us to tell in this comic book is, has he been drinking? Is he visibly impaired? The suggestion earlier was that he would be at this bar, getting drunk and ready to race. He doesn't seem drunk in the way that he speaks with Batgirl, but that's the thing we've been led to believe. And if it's even remotely true, I ask again, why not stop him there? Anybody who has taken the keys from a drunk friend and not let them get behind the wheel knows that they are in the right. They know that they are going to have, if not the weight of the actual law, the weight of ethics on their side. I don't know, officer. He was about to get into the car, drunk, and drive down the street, and I stopped him. He resisted, and I had to put him down. Sorry. But all of that happens before the race starts, and before the danger comes along with it. And you would think that Batgirl would know that. But she wants to stop Barbary in a big, flashy way. She wants to prove to Liam that she isn't a menace. She takes down menaces. Unfortunately, she nearly kills a bunch of people in the process and destroys a lot of property. Once they get into the race, there are some pretty cool action set pieces here. The mini-bomb-induced side wheelie is pretty cool. But it also emphasizes just how far this has escalated out of Batgirl's control. She barely saved that pedestrian and his dog's life, and she had to use an explosive device on a vehicle with an internal combustion engine in order to do it. In the end, she stops Barbary with a cute little glue bomb gadget that she throws into his window, and it explodes pink bubblegum all over him and keeps it and makes it so that he can't drive, and also so he doesn't die in the ensuing wreck. But this is complicated by the fact that we know from last issue she has an EMP bomb just for stopping cars. I don't think that Barbara skipping over that bomb is an accident or an oversight, either by her or by the writing team. Barbara is doing this on purpose in a flashy manner. And it works. Of course there are cops in hot pursuit. And of course Liam is the officer trying to arrest her. And of course, she utterly and spectacularly failed to do what she set out to do, and even has to further embarrass Liam in her escape. So let me ask you a question. Was all this kind of a self-fulfilling story? Liam suggests that Batgirl is a menace and out of control because of her constant visibility and courting of public opinion. When she specifically sets out to prove him wrong, she's running so hard from her real life that she does it in the most spectacularly self-destructive way possible, thus proving that Liam was right about Batgirl, at least in that moment, if not generally. One thing is for sure, Barbara has real personal problems that are getting in the way of both of her jobs. We cut from the embarrassment of Liam and the escape of Batgirl to a coffee shop. And we go right into another secret identity crisis as Liam, rightfully I feel, drags Batgirl to Barbara. Liam misunderstands Barbara's sad face and apologizes for being petty, thus proving he's a pretty good guy, because he is not actually being petty, and Barbara is sad for self-serving reasons, at least from my perspective. He doesn't know any of that, he just feels bad that he's boring his date, and apologizes, even though he hasn't really done anything wrong. In the process, he mentions Barbara's brother. Now, Jim Gordon Jr. is another continuity snarl, but I believe the one thing we can be sure is he's dangerous, unbalanced, and in the last arc before Batgirl of Burnside, threatened Barbara's previous roommate, Alicia, with death after dating her. This is a topic she would never talk to Liam about this early in a relationship. She realizes that. She knows she doesn't remember talking to him about it. And it's creepy. But before Barbara can think harder about this, she's distracted by the online Batgirl hate. This is another clue she is not in a good space. Worry about the cop you're dating who knows more about you than you remember telling him. I mean, what's the most obvious possibility there, right? That he's kind of stalking you. He doesn't seem like he's that kind of guy, and we know that's not what's going on, but it's not like Barbara's new here. She knows what the Gotham City police have been like in the past. She knows that every single cop isn't necessarily a good guy. She also knows the information that a good cop can get access to just by flashing a badge and applying a little bit of deductive reasoning. Maybe she should leap to a negative understanding of what's going on with Liam there. Maybe at the very least she should stop and go, wait, he also did this thing with my mom. What is going on here? But instead, she's scrolling through her social media feeds, seeing how bad Burnside has it in for Batgirl. And I gotta say, the Burnside turn against Batgirl is lamentable, but it's also realistic. She'd been courting them for positive public opinion, and then when she does something that is spectacularly foolish and destructive and takes out a local landmark in the process, you can't blame people for turning against her. And, at a meta level, it somewhat mirrors the public turn on the creative team after their misstep with Dagger Type in the previous issue. Now, the way that production schedules work, there is no way that the creative team meant for it to read like that. But you can't deny that they have been making big efforts to make this book diverse and different and interesting. And in the moment, they grabbed at some low-hanging fruit and made a mistake doing it. Similarly to how Barbara thought that she was going to make a big splash for Batgirl and smooth some stuff over with Liam by taking out Barbary in this big, splashy way. And it backfired on them, not just in the execution of the plan, but also in the public reaction to it. Now, we'll talk more about whether or not that makes any sense as a metaphor as the story goes on, and whether Barbara handles it as well as the creative team handled their backlash, because you'll remember from that session, they handled it very, very well. But I can't help but notice some meta parallels there. Back to the story, Liam's phone rings, and it says that Barbara is calling, but Barbara is right there. She answers it, and it sounds like herself. The other Barbara is taunting her. Liam, Liam, don't you want to hear my secrets, Liam? Don't you? It is such an amazingly creepy ending. What is even happening? Who is this other Barbara / Batgirl that's been trying to frighten, kill, and ruin the real Barbara / Batgirl, even to the point of having a sort of sub-relationship with Barbara's new boyfriend? It is single white female in a superhero style, and it smooth creeps me out. And that brings us to the end of the 4th issue. It's a fascinating culmination of the themes that have been building up until now. Barbara, as Batgirl, succumbs to the cult of fame herself. In the name of popularity, she does dangerous, stupid things to make Batgirl famous more than to make her effective. And I do think at the end of this issue, Barbara has hit something like a rock bottom and realizes that she's made many mistakes, but it's also going to be a minute before she figures out how to fix them. And with that phone call at the end, she realizes that the big bad isn't just impersonating her online, or to people who don't know Batgirl and Barbara, or to criminals that she's hiring to kill Batgirl, but she's also impersonating her to Liam. And so effectively that he doesn't realize it isn't the real Babs. Like I said, it definitely ups the creep factor. And infiltrating real relationships may not be as literally physically dangerous as hiring assassins on super motorcycles or building up an unhinged artist to the point that he thinks he can be Batgirl. But it's still very dangerous, and it's chilling as hell. As we come to the end of this session, I'll renew my questions for you guys. Tell me what you think about the ethics of vigilantism. You can't tug on that thread too hard without the entire tapestry of the DC universe coming apart. But at the same time, you do have questionable behavior from Barbara, and you also have what has been in the fiction her biggest fan questioning if she's being a little weird and creepy and stalkery. Does that make you guys feel as though maybe we should be talking about some of the limits or the appropriate boundaries of vigilantism, even in terms of the Bat family? I'm going to renew my question about Dagger Type and the transmisogyny. If any of you have any questions or concerns or thoughts on whether the creative team handled that well or did the public way overblow it, I'd love to hear it. And coming into this issue, how much did you appreciate the fact that Barbara is in crisis? Like I said, I had to get over decades of continuity in order to see that this is a young woman who is running away from her problems and vanishing them into dangerous extreme behavior. It takes a minute to realize that it's dangerous and extreme, because what's dangerous and extreme mean to Batgirl, right? It's not exactly the same as somebody drinking their problems away or partying their problems away. But at the point that you have her taking out other dangerous fame whores in the most destructive, flashy way possible instead of the most effective way possible, all the while missing out on huge life changes of Dinah, a person who has been a very good friend of hers, all the while not working at all to deal with her academic woes until her professor shows up, and then just disappearing on the guy. Barbara is not enjoying being Barbara. She was enjoying Batgirl, and when that got threatened by Dinah and Liam, she doubled down hard on it, and she paid the price. That is some pretty spectacular storytelling, and it's definitely what we would call the midpoint of the story. And that's a bit of a term of art. I don't mean the exact 50% mark. I mean the place where things have been going pretty well for our hero, and then there is a massive reversal. She's ruined her reputation, and the big bad is even creepier and more dangerous than she realized. Strong writing. What do you guys think? Once again, I say thanks for listening to this session of Superhero University on Batgirl of Burnside. I really appreciate my fantastic patrons that support me month in, month out, and also saved me from being wrong about this issue. Get back to me with your questions or concerns about this issue or the last issue. You can reach me via email at pulpdictionpress@gmail.com. You can also tweet at me with the hashtag SHU Batgirl. I'd love to keep having that conversation. You guys make the seminar sessions better with those interactions, and I really appreciate it. And so I will leave you until next Bat time, next Bat channel. See you then. Superhero University is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. And if you can't support us financially, please leave the show a rating and review on iTunes. It's the best way to help others discover the show. Keep up with Pulp Diction news by following our host on Twitter @Joshua Unruh, or find us at facebook.com/pulpdictionproductions.